The Commanders have a big decision to make at the 2024 NFL Draft. They essentially have to decide who the Patriots are going to end up with at quarterback. There is a major debate at 2 between Drake Maye and Jayden Daniels, and who knows who Washington wants. It looks like Jayden Daniels right now, but you never know. This selection can completely change the future of the franchise, and the new staff and ownership have to hit. Personally, I love the new group running the show in Washington. They've already changed a lot of different things for the better, but if they don't hit on a quarterback, it might not even matter. This is a very good draft to have a high pick and need a quarterback. The Commanders are in a really lucky spot to have the second overall selection this year, opposed to next season or 2 years ago. Of course, last year the second overall pick was CJ Stroud, who was fantastic for the Texans as a rookie. We'll have to see how everything looks next year, but I think it's going to be a weaker class, at least compared to this year. It's going to be Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, and Shedeur Sanders as the expected headliners for now. It's not quite the Bryce Young, Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis draft. There was debate last year between Young and Stroud, even though the consensus was definitely Bryce Young. Most people preferred him, but some did disagree, but that's not really the case this year. Caleb Williams is the guy. He's going first overall. Personally, I would have loved Caleb to go to Washington. He grew up a fan, was born in DC, and went to Gonzaga College. He was good at Oklahoma and won the Heisman at USC. Plus, he just spent time at USC with Cliff Kingsbury, the new Commanders offensive coordinator. It would have been a match made in heaven. Although I will say, recent local first rounders haven't gone well. Yes, I'm talking about Dwayne Haskins and Chase Young. Still, Caleb feels like a generational can't miss prospect, just like Chase did. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. The Bears are going to take Caleb to start the draft with that pick from the Panthers when they traded up for Bryce. With no Caleb on the board, that's going to leave the Commanders with the option of everyone else in the draft, and it's going to be a quarterback. From everything I've seen on Twitter and just talking to others, the question seems extremely split among everyone, and it's all between Drake Maye or Jayden Daniels. I took it upon myself to text some of my friends that I do consider die-hard Commanders fans. I put them on a group chat and asked who they wanted. 3 of them said Drake Maye. The other 2 said Jayden Daniels. Me personally, well, I want Drake Maye too. Drake Maye is a guy I got to see play live against Virginia Tech and have watched a ton of him over the past few seasons since he took over at UNC after Sam Howell got drafted. I thought he was a good quarterback and showed a lot of tools that could translate over to the pros. I know there might be a sour taste in everyone's mouth from Howell and that Carolina Blue, but they're pretty different players, even if Howell and Mitch Trubisky didn't work out. Maye was great as a redshirt freshman and then had a bit of a down year, just like Howell did. Instead, his draft stock didn't completely tank, but he wasn't as effective. Personally, I just love his arm. I think he's super accurate. I think he's super strong. There's a lot of talk about how mobile Jayden Daniels was, but honestly, Maye was super useful on the ground too. Plus, he's 2 years younger. Jayden's only 3 months younger than Sam Howell, who's now heading into his 3rd year in the pros and just got traded to Seattle from Washington. Also, that means Jayden Daniels is a lot more experienced. He started all 5 years opposed to Maye's 2. I think he clearly is more athletic, but I just like Maye's arm more. Then again, both of them really have the same problems. I think they make bad decisions worse, and really Caleb Williams even does the same. There's a lot of poking at bad plays from Maye or Daniels, but pretty much every quarterback prospect has those. That's not really a huge issue, but I do personally think that Jayden is just overly reckless. He worries me, but he's also just probably better at making something out of nothing. In fact, I think he could be good in the pros anyway. I just think Drake Maye has the higher ceiling, and I personally always want to take that in the draft. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen were those projects that could turn into something great and did. If you pick safe, you're gonna end up with safe. If Washington wanted safe, then we should have just given Kirk Cousins a bag a long time ago. I want to take the Hail Mary at quarterback 10 of 10 times. You either need a cheap or a great quarterback to win a Super Bowl, so you can't get stuck paying just a good quarterback a lot of money. So you have to swing for the fences. Regardless of who Washington drafts at 2, there's then going to be the question of whether or not they should start week 1 or sit behind Marcus Mariota. The Commanders have definitely made a push at solidifying the quarterback room. Mariota is a guy that is perfect for Washington because he can start, but he's not the long-term option. That's essentially what he was 2 years ago in Atlanta. He was there to start when Desmond Ridder wasn't ready, or it was just straight up bad. He had some good and some bad with the Falcons. He was with the Raiders before that and the Eagles last year. He didn't start a single game for either one. I have to bet that he's just going to be remembered as a Titan when his career's over. He was there for 5 seasons, started 61 games, and here's what I love. He was the 2nd overall pick in 2015. He was super hyped up, even won a Heisman, which could be the same deal with Daniels. Plus, both are very mobile. It'd be very similar situations coming into the league, whether it's Maye or Daniels. Maye has been hyped up for a while, like Mariota was. He would be able to mentor a young quarterback who, like him, was the 2nd overall pick behind a big-time prospect that a lot of scouts loved. In his case, it was Jameis Winston. So even if Marcus Mariota doesn't start for Washington, the role is clear, and I like the signing. Washington did also sign Jeff Driscoll. He started 12 games for 5 different teams and has been on 8 different rosters. He started a single game with the Browns last year. He should be a good QB3 and can definitely play if he has to. The only other quarterback on the roster is Jake Fromm, who's really been in Washington since 2022. He's been mostly just on the practice squad, but was on the active roster late last season after Jacoby Brissett got hurt. I don't really expect him to be on the final roster, but he could be on the practice squad again. Quarterback really is something that we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. But honestly, I do trust Washington to make the right pick, make the right decision. Mainly because I trust the new staff and ownership. Whichever quarterback Washington takes will be the first one for this new staff. Ron Rivera is gone, and now it's Dan Quinn in at head coach and Adam Peters at general manager. I have a lot of faith, specifically in Peters. He's had a part in some really good 49ers draft classes, including taking Brock Purdy 2 years ago. San Francisco has been the prime example of how to draft and build a good team, and hopefully he can do the same in Washington. For Dan Quinn, getting a good quarterback is priority number 1 if he wants to build a serious contender. He was lucky to have Matt Ryan in Atlanta. He won MVP that year the Falcons made it to the Super Bowl. And Quinn's had a lot of recent success in Dallas as the Cowboys defensive coordinator, and he's already brought a lot of familiar faces to Washington. Bobby Wagner's probably the biggest name. The Commanders could use linebacker help, and Dan Quinn was the DC behind the Legion of Boom. Plus, Dante Fowler Jr. and Doris Armstrong are both defensive ends who were with Quinn in Dallas, as was center Tyler Biadasz, who is definitely going to help the offensive line. Lastly, Olamide Zaccheaus is going to be some extra needed wide receiver help. He played for Quinn in Atlanta, and he's a guy I'm excited to watch play in the burgundy and gold. I watched and rooted for him when he was at UVA, so it's really cool to see him in Washington. Same goes for Clelin Ferrell. He was the 4th overall pick, and he just didn't live up to the hype with the Raiders, but he's a Richmond kid, just like me, grew up near me, and he's talked about just like the OG Redskins training camp in Richmond before, so that's just awesome, and I'll be rooting for him as well. Washington is some time away from being a good team, and we are a quarterback away at least, but personally, I do trust Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. I just trust that they're the right guys for the job, and that they're going to take the right guy and make the right decisions.